Till now we have seen how to see output in our browser by using JavaScript. Now we will see handling inputs in JavaScript. Handling inputs in JavaScript. How we can handle inputs in JavaScript, we will see now. JavaScript is a client-side scripting language that can accept input from the browser and handle manipulations on that input value. We can handle inputs by using two types, from prompt and from HTML form input element. We will see a real world example by using these two types. First I will make a note about this. JavaScript is a client side scripting language that can accept input from the browser and handle manipulations on input value. Client side input can be handled by using two types. What are those two types? We can handle by using prompt and secondly HTML form elements, HTML form input elements. First we will discuss about prompt. How we can handle inputs by using prompt, we will see now. It is a function of JavaScript document object. It is a function of JavaScript document object. It pop-ups an input box in the browser that allows the user to input a value. It pop-ups an input box in the browser. So in that pop-up you have to write an input value. This is how prompt will take input value from browser, and it returns the input value when clicked OK and returns null when clicked cancel. We will see. First we will make a note about this. It pops up an input box in the browser that allows the user to input a value. And also it returns the input value When clicked, OK, and returns null when clicked, cancel. It returns the input value when we click OK, and it returns null when we click cancel. We will see a real world example how to do this in our web page. Just open a Visual Studio Code, create a new file, name it as ai.html. Inside this, use doctype HTML, then HTML. Inside this, we have head section and we have body section. In body section, I want to use div tag. Inside div tag, I want to use form. Inside form, I want to use input tag. Inside this input tag, for this I will give type as button. I will give a value like create folder. Then I will use event, on click event. I will call my function from this on click event. First I have to create my function. Head section, I will create a script tag. Inside this, I will write my function like function. I will write and I will name it as create. So in this function, I will create a variable name. I will use prompt. Inside this prompt, I will use folder name. I will give name as new folder. I will create another variable where msg. I will use document.get element by id. First, I will use a div tag. Inside this div tag, I will give id as name msg. That msg I will store in my same msg variable. Then I will use a condition here, name double equal to null. If my name variable is returning null, then I want to print document.write action cancelled. If my name variable is not returning null, then I want to print msg dot inner html is equal to plus is equal to folder created I want to use the name, then I will use br. Now I have to call my function create from this onClick event. Just save it, Ctrl S. Now we will discuss how our program is executed. We will see execution flow. I am creating a form element. Inside form element I am using input element. For this input element I am giving a value called create folder. I am using onClick event. From this onClick event I am calling my create function. Control goes to my create function. Inside this create function I am using prompt function. Inside this prompt function, whenever this prompt function is visible in our browser, a pop-up will be appeared to input a value. That inputted value we will store in name variable. In our name variable I am going to store that input value, and when name is written, if I did not input any value, my name will return, this prompt will return a null value. That null value will be stored in my name variable. When we come to our condition, if name is equal to null, then this document.write will be executed as action cancelled. If I have typed some input value, if I gave some name, that name will be stored in my name variable. When it comes to our condition, null name double equal to null, this condition is false. That's why document.write will not be executed. Message.inner HTML will be executed. In my message.inner HTML, I want to execute folder created with name, and I am using br for line space. Folder created this with my name variable. In my name, whatever input value I am giving, that input value I have stored in my name variable that I want to print here. That's why I am using plus name plus. This message.inner HTML will be stored in my message variable, and that whatever we have written in msg.inner HTML, whatever we have written inside message.inner HTML will be stored in my message variable, and that will be printed in my div tag. Whatever I have given id is equal to message, it will be printed in this div tag. Now save it, Ctrl S. Our web page name is ai.html. Go to browser, search for ai.html. Press enter. Now it is showing me create folder. Just click on it. It is asking me inside prompt, if I did not give any name, if I click on cancel, action cancel, it is showing me action cancelled. Now refresh it and click on create folder. I want to give name as my name, HEMANTH. I want to give Hemant as a name, and I am clicking on OK. It is showing me folder created with my name Hemant. This is what we will get by using prompt this is what we can get by using prompt. Thank you. Now we will see how we can handle input from HTML form elements. Handling inputs from HTML form elements. We will see how to handle inputs from HTML form elements. HTML provides several elements that allow the user to input a value, but JavaScript can access the values from form elements and can use in manipulations. JavaScript refers the elements and their values dynamically by using various reference methods like by name or by ID. For example, we have form elements used. Form inputs are We have text box like checkbox and radio box, list box. We have seen in our HTML classes, whatever the form element consists of some input elements like text box, checkbox, radio button, list box, drop down list. All this consists of form elements. First we will make a note about this, then we will see a real world example. HTML provides several elements that allow the user to input values. JavaScript can access the values from form elements and use in manipulations. JavaScript refers the elements and their values dynamically by using various reference methods like by name, comma, id, comma, etc. The form elements used form inputs are text box, comma, checkbox, comma, radio button, comma, list box, comma, drop down list, comma, etc. These are the form elements, form input elements we use in inside form. So we will see a real world example how we can handle inputs from HTML forms. Just go to Visual Studio Code, create a JavaScript file with name a9.html, doc type HTML, use inside HTML tag, we have head and body. Inside body, I will create a div tag. Inside div tag, I will use form tag. Inside form tag, I will use field set. Inside this field set, we have legend tag. Inside this legend tag, we will use register product. For this field set, I want to give a ID called show register. After this legend, I want to use a data list. Inside this data list, I want to give a use data term as product ID. Then I will use data definition. Inside data definition, I will use input tag. As type, product ID will be number. You have to use number type. Then I will use minimum numbers like 1. For max numbers, how many numbers they can use, like I will give 10. I will give a ID for this input. I will give ID as txt ID. Then close this input tag. At last we will see how our HTML page is executed. I will tell you execution process after writing the code. Then we have one more data list. I will use product name. Inside this, I will use data definition. Inside data definition, I will use input tag. As type, name will be text. And I will give ID. ID I will give as txt name. Then we will create another data term. We will create product price. Data definition. Inside this, we will use input. As type, we will use as a range. We will use minimum 1000 and max 4000 or 40,000. We will use 40,000. Then I will give a ID. For this ID I will give as txt price. Then I will close input tag. Then we will create another data term. Inside this data term, this is for product manufactured. Inside this data definition, I will use input. Type we will give as manufactured, means it will be date. We will use date type. I will give ID name as txt mfd. Then I will close this input tag. Then I will create one more data term. For this I will give is in stock. Product is there in stock or not. Data definition. Inside this I will use input tag. Inside input type I will give as text, or else we will use all the form input elements we will use in this. For this is in stock I will use radio button. And I will give name as stock. And I will give a value available. I will give ID for this as OPT, option yes. And I have to use another input for this with type radio, name, you have to give same name because it is for both input elements are for is in stock itself. Value I will give as out of stock. Out of stock. Then I will give a ID for this as OPT NO. Just write S here and no here. Then we will create another data term. This is for shipped to which city. We will use data definition. Inside this data definition we will use select element. For this select element I will give a ID as list of cities, like we will give name as LST cities. We will use option like value I give as Delhi. Close this option. Delhi. I want to use another option as Hyderabad. For this I will give value as HYD. Then come out of this data list. We will give a line break. After this line break, I will use a input element, input tag. I will give type as button. Value I will give as a register. Then I will use event, on click event. I will write a register method. First I will create a method. Whenever user gave all input values from this data list, like in my browser it is showing product ID, product name, product price, product manufacturer. After filling all these inputs in my data list, user will press my button which is having value register. When user clicked on register, on click event will raise my function. Means I have to create a function in my script tag. Inside the script tag, I have to create function. Function, like we will give function name as register. Inside this function, whatever the user is giving all the input values, I have to store that input values in a variables. I will show you how to store all those input values in variables. First you have to create a variable var id. I am creating var id is equal to document dot get element by id. What is the ID name for our product ID? For our product ID, I have given ID name as txt ID. Just put this txt ID in my get element by ID. I want to store this value product ID, which is having ID is equal to txt ID, in my ID variable. That's the reason I have given this ID to my ID variable dot value. Next, where we have name. Name I have to take from document dot get element by id. For my product name, I have given a ID name called txt name. This txt name ID I want to store in a variable name. Dot value. Whatever the product name I am getting from this page has input value. By using id is equal to txt name, I'm forwarding that product name from my HTML page to by using id is equal to txt name. I'm storing that value in my name variable by using document.get element by id. Now I have to store my product price in a variable. How we can store whatever we have done? Same thing we have to do. I want to store price is equal to document.get element by id. Inside this, you have to give product price id name. For product price, we have given id name as txt price. Then whatever the value we are getting from here, by using this get element by id, by using this id name, value will be stored in my price variable. Now I have to store my manufacture date. How we can store it? Where? Just use mfd. Inside this mfd, you want to store your manufacture date, document.get element by id. And our date element id is txt mfd. Copy it and paste here. Dot value. Then whatever the value, your input value you are getting from this id, from this product manufactured, it will be stored in your mfd variable. Next we have is in stock. Is in stock, we are using radio button. Means either it will be yes or no. Either it is available or not. Here we have to use if condition. How we can do it? I want to store the value either is in stock, either available or out of stock. How we can store it? First create a variable where yes, I'm creating with yes name, document dot get element by id. For yes, I have given a ID. For input type radio name stock. For yes, I have given a ID opt yes. Just take this ID name, copy and paste it here. This is for variable yes. Here you should not use dot value because you are not storing any value in this. You are just storing ID which is related to OPT yes. And we have where no. Here you have to use document dot get element by ID. For no, we have given ID called OPT no. Just copy it, give ID to this no. Here you are not storing any value, any input value. That's the reason we should not use dot value. Then we have to use if condition here. If yes dot, we have to use checked. If yes dot checked, if user is clicked on yes, then you have to create a variable called stock is equal to yes dot value. Here you have to store, here you have to use dot value because you are storing a input value which you are getting from user. That value you are storing in a stock. That's the reason I'm using dot value. This dot value represent value should store in stock variable. If user clicked on yes, if user clicked on no, then what should be executed? No dot checked. If user clicked on no, then stock is equal to no dot value. If user clicked on yes, yes dot check, then yes dot value will be stored in stock. What value will be stored in stock? Value we are giving inside this input type. For yes, I have given a value called available. If user clicks on yes, then yes dot value. This available what we have given for yes OPT yes, that yes will be stored in stock. If no dot checked, stock is equal to no dot value. What will be stored in stock if user clicked on no? For no, we have given a value out of stock. Then out of stock value will be stored in this stock if user clicked on no. Next we have ship to means city name. We have to store city name in our variable. Just use where city document dot get element by ID. For cities we have given, for cities we used select. For select we have given an ID name called list of cities, LST cities. Just copy this LST cities, paste it here. I'm copy pasting because this name capital letter or small letter, this should not be wrong. You will get errors because of only capital letter and small letter in this program. Just check it because to come out of those problems, I'm copy pasting these names. I'm just copy pasting the names. Please don't mind. Whatever the value I'm getting, either value Delhi or value Hyderabad from this ID LST cities, I want to store it in city variable. Here you have to use dot value because here from these two options I have to store value. I have two values, Delhi and Hyderabad. That value I have to store in my city variable. That's the reason I am using dot value. This is how you can store your product related information in variable. So you want to see in browser itself whatever you are storing the product information in these variables. You want to see that product information in browser itself. How you can see it? I will show you how you can see that product information in browser itself. Just come out of this field set, create a line break, use BR. After this, create one more field set. For this field set, I want to give name as I want to give ID is equal to show details. Then I want to use legend tag. Inside this legend tag, this field set is for product, seeing product information like product. We will give product details. Inside this field set, we will use a table. For this table, I will give a width is equal to, we will give 400. I will give a border with 1. Inside this table, I want to create a table row. Inside this table row, I want to use table data as product ID. I want to use one more table data. Inside this, I want to just create two table datas. For first table data, give product ID, and for second table data, we have to get value from our JavaScript code that we will write next. Just create a table data and leave it. Create one more table row. Inside this table row, create one more table data. For this, give name or product name. Use one more table data. So here we are creating a table to see the information of that product. In this table, I am creating a table row with product ID. Whatever the user is typing product ID, I want to see here. How you can see here? For this TD, I want to give a ID with, like, we will give name as LBL ID. By using this ID, I have to see what I want to see the product ID in this table data. How we can get it? Just go to our JavaScript code. Inside our function register, just use document.getElementById. This ID, LBL ID, copy it, Control C, and paste it in this. Dot inner text, I want to use inner text is equal to, here you have to give your variable name, var ID I am giving here. What is happening here? I have created a table row with two table data. This is my product ID table data, and I want to see what the information. I want to see the information of product from my JavaScript code. How we can get it? Here I am giving a ID for this table data like LBL ID. By using that ID, I am using that ID here, document.getElementById. That ID I am giving here. For this ID, for this whatever the ID we have given for that element, inside that element, I want to store a data. How we can store a data? By using dot inner text. Inner text meaning is store this text, inner text, whatever the data is there inside this ID, store in this LBL ID related element. This dot inner text is equal to ID. Whatever the txt ID we are getting here, that value I am storing in this ID. And whatever the value I am storing in this ID, I want to see that ID in this, I want to send that ID by using inner text I am sending that to LBL ID to LBL ID element. By using this LBL ID element, whatever the data is storing in my ID will be forwarded to LBL ID element. That LBL ID element is here. Then whatever the product information is there, from that my ID will be visible in this product ID related table data. Same we can get it. Same we have to use for product name also. Here you have to create a table data. For this, give a name called LBL name. Just copy it, LBL name. We want to see product name. How we can see product name? Just create document dot get element by ID. Our ID name is LBL name. And for this LBL name ID, I want to store a value from my variable. How we can store a value from a variable? For that you have to use inner text is equal to what variable value you want to store in this LBL name. I want to store name variable in this LBL name. You have to use name variable here. Then by using this dot inner text, whatever the data is there in your name variable, this inner text meaning is whatever the text is there in this inner variable, that will be stored in LBL name. Then that will be visible to user in browser from this table data. Like this, we will create one more table row. Table data, we have price. Table data, I want to give ID for this. ID has LBL price. Then I have to copy this LBL price. I want to see price in this table data. By using this ID, I have to store the value which is coming from my text price. Just come here, create a document dot get element by ID. Inside this, you have to paste LBL price. And I want to store a price variable value which is getting inside price variable. How? By using dot inner text is equal to our variable name is price. Next, create one more table row. Inside this table row, I will create a table data. This table data is for manufactured. Then I will create one more table data. For this, I will give a ID. ID has, I will give LBL MFD. Then I will copy this ID. Document dot get element by ID. LBL MFD dot inner text. I want to store a value from MFD variable. MFD. Next, I want to create a one more table row. Inside this, I want to create table data. Inside this is for is in stock. I will create one more table data. I will give a ID for this. ID as LBL stock. Copy it. Document dot get element by ID dot inner text. For my stock, I have a variable called stock. Just copy it, stock variable, and paste it here. Whatever the value I'm getting from this stock variable, I want to store it in LBL stock, then it will be visible in browser. Next we will create one more table row. Inside this table row we will create one more table data. This is for ship to. For this table data I will give a ID like LBL. This is for city, right? LBL city. Copy it. Document dot get element by ID LBL city dot inner text is equal to, and for my city is I'm storing in whatever the city I'm getting from user, I'm storing it in city variable. This city variable I have to copy it and paste it here. Then this city variable is stored in LBL city. Then that value will be visible to user from this table row. And from this table, if you want to register one more product, then you have to go for your, just save it, Control S. I want to use some styles like for data term, font weight, I will use bold, save it. Now open our HTML page in our browser, a9.html. Just go to browser. I forgot to call our function in our onClick event. Our function name is register. Register, save it, Control S. Now go to browser, refresh it. ID 1, Samsung TV, price something, date I am giving tomorrow's date 7/10/2020. Any date you can give, 2/10/2020. Is in stock, yes, ship to Hyderabad. Then click on register. Yeah, whatever the product related information I am typing here, all those information is stored in my table. Product ID 1, product name Samsung TV, and price and manufacture date is in stock, available, ship to Hyderabad. This is how we can handle input values by using form elements. Thank you.